Why is it so damn hard to stay focused? No matter how much coffee I drink, how much sleep I get, how many friends I ghost, or how many hours I set aside, I just keep daydreaming. What's funny is I actually love daydreaming. It's comforting, it's enjoyable, it feels good, but being up in the clouds all day quickly becomes wasteful. There are times where I can't focus on studying for more than 5 minutes before my mind starts to wander off. The question is, at what point does daydreaming become a problem? A little daydream therapy here and there seems harmless, even healthy, since it actually motivates me to work on myself. I knew I couldn't be the only rookie with this thought, so I looked into it. Psychologist Ellie Sommer was the first person to propose a mental health observation about this type of mind wandering, and he called it maladaptive daydreaming. It's not yet a proper diagnosis, but it's described as a situation where individuals engage in vivid, fanciful daydreaming for hours, neglecting real-life relationships and responsibilities, resulting in clinical distress and functional impairment. For hours on end. Unlike most popular representations of daydreaming where the dreamer seems spaced out and needs a snap back to reality, maladaptive daydreamers engage in it willingly, even mouthing the words or acting out their dreams to reinforce the positive emotions from it. And that's the reason daydreaming can be dangerous, because it's so enjoyable and it's so accessible to anyone, any age, any time. It's free dopamine.
This type of rewarding experience can create a yearning, a craving, a longing for that experience which is so pleasant. As you probably notice, what I'm actually talking about is the conditions ripe for the development of a behavioral addiction. So this is when immersive daydreaming becomes maladaptive daydreaming.
After reading up and learning about maladaptive daydreaming, I was convinced that Ellie Sommer had just followed me around for a few years because it sounded like it described me perfectly. Maybe it was a form of medical student syndrome where you feel like you have all the symptoms of the conditions you learn about, but I had to be sure I wasn't going insane. So I got some input from someone more reliable than myself about daydreaming. Hey, wake up. Hey.
What?
So what are your daydreams usually about?
I guess sometimes I dream about us being jacked, or...
Wait, I'm in your dreams too?
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh.
Wait, am I not in yours? Usually when I daydream, it's about like something I'm working hard towards, or it's like when I'm really stressed out.
So it sounds like daydreams are like a form of escapism from negative emotions you're having?
Yeah. What do you usually daydream about?
Pretty much the same thing as you, although I'm like pretty huge already. Or I'll have dreams about like finishing my exams early, or I'll have wet dreams sometimes. It seemed like Mike and I shared the same experience with daydreams, which made me feel a lot better. And after going back and forth, we compiled all the reading we'd done and came up with 3 practical tips to manage frequent daydreaming.
Tip number 1 is to look forward to the daydream. As we study, we naturally tend to daydream, and I've always hated when that happens, so I turn it into something fun. I challenge myself to see how long can my focus actually last before I start daydreaming. And if I can extend that length with regular training, that's where the fun comes in. So instead of using a timer for Pomodoro, I sometimes switch to using a stopwatch to measure how long I can actually last. When I feel like I've lost my focus, I'll gladly take a break. And once I've recharged, I can then try an endurance test for another round. And how long should the break be? Well, a tip from Pomodoro is to divide your focus time by 4 to calculate your break time. So for example, if you study for 20 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. Number 2 is to put things into your environment to distract you. Yes, it's usually helpful to eliminate distractions, dispose of things like my phone, video games, my younger brother, but there is a way to use distractions to your advantage. We can actually use distractions for specific cues to remind us to stay focused and not daydream. This comes from Rock Lee. Yes, I just cited Naruto. I wear this really uncomfortable piece of thick leather. It's constantly nagging and weighing on my wrists, so whenever I'm distracted by it, it's a cue to remind me to regain focus and resist the temptation to daydream. Matty also uses the focus band. I mean, let's be honest, everyone at Cajun Koi Academy uses the focus band, but Matty's kitsune brain is even worse than mine, so sometimes he puts stickers all over the walls, or sometimes he'll change his phone lock screen to a friendly reminder. Number 3 is to collect your daydreams. As the ancient one once said,
"We never lose our demons, Morda. We only learn to live above them."
we're never gonna fully get rid of our daydreams, but we can learn to be in control. We can do this with the Daydream Diary. The idea is to make a note of what it is that you dream about. And don't wait to write it down, do it the moment that you start drifting, because we wanna offload those thoughts from our brain and keep our mind focused and clear. Keeping a diary is also a great way to gain insight into what kinds of daydreams we have. I'll go ahead and share one of my dreams, but in return, you gotta share one of yours in the comments below. So for me, not many people know this, but I've started writing a novel about the Cajun Koi universe, obviously. And lately, I find myself daydreaming, like, what if this novel miraculously does well? Like, what if this novel becomes an anime or a full-on movie? What if they make a Cajun Koi ride at Disneyland? Obviously, never going to happen, but keeping a diary helped me recognize the pattern of my daydreams so that the next time I start drifting, it's easier for me to think, oh, it's one of these ridiculous dreams again. I've seen this before. I don't need to waste my time any further on it, offload it from my mind, and keep moving.
After implementing these strategies into our daily study routine, we both started to notice lots of improvement in our focus. But even though I felt more confident in my ability to snap out of a daydream or take a break when I felt my mind wandering off, these tips weren't addressing the underlying reason of why I kept daydreaming. I was using it as a coping mechanism for emotional distress.
One way of coping seemed to have been the creation of an alternative reality.
In general, poor emotional regulation was linked with a higher degree of maladaptive daydreaming.
I remember on rotations in medical school, I felt overwhelmed with learning EKGs. All of a sudden, I had to recall algebra, vectors, and electrophysics, stuff I haven't even thought about in years, and apply them to cardiac physiology. It was so difficult, so when the pressure got too real, I found myself escaping into daydreams. I'd daydream about impressing my attending on rounds by identifying a cardiac ischemia or pulmonary embolism. I had no other way to deal with that frustration I was feeling. Daydreaming was a coping mechanism where I'd imagine a time in the future when I overcame those emotions. So a more lasting solution to daydreaming is to explore ways to actually manage and unravel those stressful emotions. And it's gonna take weeks, months, or even years of deep introspection and self-discovery for me to accept my insecurities and figure all that stuff out. All that's not to say that these tips and tricks we showed you aren't useful, because they definitely are. They do help us get by on the day-to-day. But at Cajun Koi Academy, our goal is to empower students to think deeply so we can live our best lives. And that's why we all match into clubs, to understand ourselves just a little bit better. Just remember that you're not alone. We're here to figure it out all together. So share this video with a friend who needs a snap back to reality. It would mean so much to me.